manipulating, being hacked, backdoors being built in. And then when you do have transparent systems, there's always normal problems and chicanery there. So the claim that we shouldn't have transparent elections and that we're just being paranoid, well, that's ridiculous.
Right, and if you notice how the news media spins this, and both the right-wing and the left-wing, canned news outlets, just editorial outlets basically, spun it the same way. When it was found by a citizen that the vote count that was reported was wrong, they started ridiculing the system and saying how ridiculous it was, and they don't know what they're doing, because people were able to see what's going on. So they neatly turned that corner from people can see what's going on, so problems see the light of day, to, oh, they don't know what they're going on because, look, there were problems. You're going to find problems if you can see them, if the system is set up right. So, what we're looking at in the upcoming election in South Carolina and most other elections is something where the citizens can't see anything. So yeah, it's going to be pretty smooth, and they can come in and they can report their results, toot sweet in 8 seconds like they like to do, and then they'll say, and there were no problems and it went smoothly. Well, yeah, that's because the public wasn't allowed to watch.
Break it down in simple terms. Your article, Recipe for Vote Fraud, a global internet voting firm buys U.S. election results reporting firm. I mean, isn't that a national security issue to have foreign companies controlling our voting? I mean, are we going to have foreign countries or companies controlling our nuclear weapons development, Bev? What's next?
And I didn't actually title it Recipe for Vote Fraud, although, and I think, let me just mention about, the frame of vote fraud versus the frame I prefer to see. You see, vote fraud may happen with an open system that we can see, but then we can see it, or it may happen with a concealed system we can't see that's controlled by a corporation. But what we have to have is a structure so that we can see what's going on, because if we can see it, that will ultimately help prevent vote fraud or catch it or expose it. So what's going on now? It's unbelievably dangerous to the whole democratic structure. In fact, it removes the democratic structure. What we have is already we have one company which is in charge of results reporting for it. I wrote in my article over 525 United States jurisdictions this fall. It's actually going to be over 900 jurisdictions in 26 states. Instead of, you'll go to your county website and you'll look at that and it'll say, oh, here's the results. Well, not really. In over 900 counties, when you go to your county website, you're actually looking at a redirected site out of Tampa, Florida. And so all the results for 26 states and 900 locations are actually going to Tampa, Florida before they're reported. And then we add to that. That firm that reports the results is then purchased by another firm out of Spain. And that firm out of Spain also produces the voting system. Now, there you get, and by the way, the type of voting that firm is, which is called SCYTL, S-C-Y-T-L, the type of voting that it's promoting is the worst kind of voting. It's internet voting. And the reason it's the worst is because the public can't see who cast the votes into that internet system. They can't see the counting of the vote. The chain of custody is completely evaporated. So you're saying, it's like, trust me, this internet voting counted by someplace in Spain is right, and the same company is going to report the results to the United States.
And by the way, this was first reported 5 days ago by Market Watch, which is part of the Wall Street Journal, and there it says it right there. And then I'm looking because I guess this is the headline we got from another site with your article. What at blackboxvoting.org, what's the actual headline of the original article you wrote, Bev? I kind of toned it down. Global internet voting firm buys U.S. election results reporting firm. And then I basically lead sentences in a major step toward global centralization of election processes, because that's really what it's doing. And I think it will help if we focus on structure, because they can't steal elections as easily if the right structure is in place. If we put the wrong,
the wrong structure in place, they can do it whatever they want, and we'll never know, and the whole thing becomes theater.
Well, sure, and I mean, the issue here is that we need to be able to track this thing from start to finish. But Bev, you should probably briefly recap. Give us some of the greatest hits of election fraud and scams. People forget that executives have gone public and said it's fraud. Engineers have gone public. They've been caught. I mean, give us some of the greatest hits.
Oh, you know, there's one that's going on right now in South Carolina. Get this. I mean, it happens locally. It happens all over the place. But this is new. You haven't heard this yet before. And this place, there were so many things that went wrong, but basically they were using these electronic voting machines, and the results were so suspicious that they sequestered the machines at the local police's office. It was a city election. And they were going to examine the machines. They set the election aside. It was so bad. And they were going to examine the machines. Well, just before they go to examine the machines, in swoops the county sheriff. Now, understand, you've got the local police officer, home rule, the chief of police. You've got the county sheriff. The county sheriff sweeps in with a bolt cutter to take the machines out of the local police chief's evidence room. And so they wouldn't let him do that, so they go to court, and the judge says, "Oh, okay, you can go get him." You know, it was just crazy. We see this kind of stuff happening all the time, where the machines are sequestered. But the bottom line is, you can't prove it because no one can see it. And even you can't extract the programming. You're just out of luck. In South Carolina, which is going to be a presidential primary this Saturday, we can't see anything and we can't prove anything. It goes into a computer program controlled by a private company. It wouldn't matter if it was public, because if they don't let you see anything, and you have absolutely no idea.
And Bev, how many times in front of the news have you gone and with engineers hacked into these voting systems, sometimes in seconds?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 4 seconds. Me and my assistant actually got into a voting system in 1 minute with $12 worth of tools. And you have to understand, me and my assistant are both, like 50-year-old woman. Well, I'm 60 now. I was 50 then. I mean, we didn't even know anything about electronics, but we figured it out. Oh, let's get a screwdriver and let's take this. It was really basically someone who is an advanced TV repairman can tamper with the result in most voting machines.
And if they'll kick Ron Paul out of debates and say he can't win and engage in all this other behavior and lie about WMDs and pass laws they can secretly arrest citizens and have us disappear into black holes, this is about trillions of dollars a year of the special interest control. You'd have to be insane to say they wouldn't use systems like this to engage in fraud. And these companies have been caught over and over again. Whatever happened with Diebold when they changed their name and sold off their systems?
Well, here's the deal with Diebold. They changed the name, then they sold it. They sold it to who? The biggest voting machine company in the country, Election Systems and Software. So I went to the Department of Justice and hammered on them and said, you've got to stop this. This is totally a monopoly. They control now 70% of the vote counting in the United States. So what does the Justice Department do? They wait and wait and wait, and then they sell off part of the acquisition to a company out of Toronto, Canada, which nobody knows who owns. So at this point, we have 70% of the votes in the U.S. counted by two companies, Election Systems and Software, and the other one is called Dominion, and we don't know who owns either company. We have no idea.
This would be like going into some machine with a carnival barker, and he says, pull the lever and the machine will tell you if you won. And you're like, well, this machine's rigged. And he says, trust me. I mean, this is the oldest trick in the book.
Oh, it is. Actually, so much of what I see is simply a magic show. When you ask a question, your attention is redirected somewhere else, just like someone who's watching a magician. It's like, don't look there, look here. But yet, if you keep your eye on the ball, it's just indefensible.
Bev Harris, we're coming up to the end of the show, but do one more segment with us because I want you to finish that point. Sure. And also give us hot spots that you see in other primaries coming up, because you called exactly what was going to happen in Iowa and in New Hampshire. So other areas that you're investigating right now. We'll be right back. We've got an article up at Infowars.com. CDC increases pressure on parents to vaccinate kids with deadly toxins. We've got newscasts out of California where they come to the door and say, we're here to shoot your child up, just outside of law. And we're getting reports here that we're going to try to confirm out of Pennsylvania. And this is actually from the sports director at a YMCA. I'll just leave it at that, where they called the state police on them when they wouldn't take a vaccine. Wow, this is crazy. I've got to get these people on. You know, Bev, it's wild how nuts everything's getting.
Oh, yeah, it is. People sometimes, I think one of the people that read my recent article said, is that it? Is it all over? Should we just, put up our feet and eat bonbons? But you have to look at this for the scale that it is. And I think once you do that, then you can start to at least approach things in a realistic frame. It's not going to be something we can wave a magic wand and all this stuff is going to get corrected quickly. We have to first understand what the key part of the problem is and then go after it. We just got to keep going after it. Actually, I want to mention something there. Back in the 1700s, before the U.S. was even a country, they banned slavery for the first time in the world. Up until that point, 75% of all people on the face of the earth were either slaves or indentured servants. The entire economy was based on it. It was banned by a small group of citizens. It took them 75 years, but they got it banned. So, I point to that to point to the idea that you can actually have success. It's been done before.
Oh, well, look at the SOPA. I mean, they're now shelving the SOPA bill. So when we take action, we can have an effect. Looking at Florida, you were making some great points during the break about what you expect to see in South Carolina and Florida.
Well, South Carolina is, I don't know, it's completely concealed and we have no idea. And they've had some extremely bizarre results before out of South Carolina. There was if you have any questions about that, Google Alvin Green in 2010, a completely bizarre situation. So we don't know. South Carolina is going to be whatever the powers that be make it be. Florida is really, I think, where it's going to start to wrap up because Florida is, it's already, they're saying now there's twice as many absentee ballots as normal. Absentee has all the problems of electronic voting plus all the problems of vote stuffing and not knowing who voted. So you've got that. And then you've got, in Florida, you now have paper ballots, but guess what they did? They made it against the law to look at the paper ballots even in a recount.
Wow.
So there we go. And we know the history of Florida in terms of all kinds of election fraud and election problems. But I think what we're going to start seeing, and this has been the whole push all along, is going to be, let's get these candidates out of the field. Let's get them to step aside. Let's anoint our winner. And you can really tell how it's going to go by watching the selected pundits on the major network news. Well, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. You look at them all and watch what they do, and they've got a drumbeat, and their drumbeat that I've been noticing right now is, well, Ron Paul is going to be able to have some effect because he's got delegates. In other words, in code, step aside, you're in the way, but we'll let you have some effect on the platform.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're saying Ron Paul can't win, step aside. Right. And when it's the other candidates that should step aside. Blackboxvoting.org. Bev Harris, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Amazing.
Thank you for listening to GCN.